We're not there. Now it's shooting up. Oh, and I just blew the 5G4. Hey guys, welcome to the extended version of the RCA 721 restoration project. I do have to give some credit to Alex at Technology Connections. It was somewhat the inspiration for this because he has a separate channel called Connextras, I think, where he does rambling background stuff, outtakes and whatnot. I know I tend to ramble and go into stories and this and that as I'm working on projects. So the short version, I'm going to take all that out and just get to it and get it done. This is going to be the rambling version of it. And part of the rambling for this is, well, I want to give you some of the background for this. So I already told you about this set. This was from the owner is in Texas. He drove up, he dropped it off, gave me a deposit to get me going on the project. I want to get this ready for him before he comes back to town again. I have to go back and look and confer with him, but I believe he wants me to go all out as much as practical on this. And I do have some surprises for him. All right, I'll just mention it here. I've been wanting to for a while. Over the years, I've accumulated a number of 721 TS related things, including original owner's manual and original service manual. So I'm going to offer those to him if he really wants to have a complete package. The only thing I don't have is an original stand for it. So over the years, I've owned several of these as best I can remember. The first one I got was when I was rather naive and started collecting, and I really wanted an RCA 621 TS. There was a collector in Milwaukee that was divesting himself of most of his TVs, and we worked out a package deal. I spent too much. I'm trying to remember what I paid in total. $1,500, $2,000, something in that ballpark for 10 sets, I think. Some of them I just didn't interest me, little portables from the 70s kind of thing. But I got a 621 TS and a 721 TS as well as a bunch of lesser sets. I said I was naive because I didn't test them. They both had bad picture tubes. And I had to spend quite a bit of money getting replacements, especially for the 621 TS, which I have. The 721 is, I think, I did videos on years ago. It's basically done, and it's actually underneath my side table off here. Then we moved just before I finished that project off entirely, and I do plan. My plan was to sell it, but I didn't. It's 95% done. Another one I got for $20 off Craigslist. I did do a video on that. The cabinet's in really rough shape, but I powered it up and it basically works. However, that one's already bookmarked because I bought a 721 TCS, which is the rare console version of this set, which I think is a really, really cool set. I've only ever seen one for sale in my area in many years of looking. It's been upgraded. It was painted 2 shades of bright blue. And the cabinet the chassis had been pulled out. I got it fairly inexpensively, and my plan is to take the chassis out of that one that's in the rough tabletop cabinet into the console, strip it, refinish it, bring it back to stock. And that one I also got the original service manual and possibly the owner's manual for that. But that one I'm keeping, at least for the time being. The third one, I think there's a third one floating around here somewhere. I got from a collector that lived near me that was moving to California, and he needed to unload some stuff, and I got a 630 TS and I think a 721 TS from him. So whatever this might need, I'm willing to scavenge out of one of my other sets to get this going. That being said, these sets are built pretty solidly, and I don't anticipate a lot of issues. So the RCA's first series of sets was based on the 630 TS chassis and the 621. The first digit is the year, so 1946. And this would be 1947, so it's the 7. The second number is the number of tubes in it. So 721, 1947, 21 tubes, TS, tabletop set. This is somewhat simplified versus the earlier 30 tube version. One less IF stage, I think. somewhat simplified power supply. And I think they took out some of the extra bells and whistles like the more complicated sets have. Vertical and horizontal centering pots. I think this is the simpler version where you eliminate some components and you just put the yoke on a gimbal so you can manipulate the yoke to center the picture rather than do it electronically with DC bias voltages. But I believe it does have that big old power resistor chimney thing mounted on the back of the chassis. So the ones I've been doing lately, it's a horizontal strip. In this version, it's like the other early RCAs, which was sort of a squarish black box. And it has 3 or 4 big old honking power resistors inside it that are tapped. I've seen those go open. You can make replacements, cobble together some power resistors, and it can be done, it has been done. Another problem I've really encountered a lot, which makes me think I should just do it without even, just do it right off the bat, is the interstage coupling for the IF is a bit different in these sets, in that it's capacitively coupled. 270 picofarad caps, there's probably 4 of them on this. One from the tuner to the first IF, first to second IF, third to fourth IF, and maybe if there is a fourth IF, or then to the detector. Rather than using primary and secondary transformer coupling between the stages. It's a little bit different than what they did the IF. Those 270 picofarad mica coupling caps are often bad. I know I've replaced them in some older sets. So. But what I plan to start out with is, we're going to pull the chassis out. I know the picture tube is really weak. But if everything looks okay, do a slow power up. I've had really good luck with getting some life out of early RCA sets that aren't just complete messes. The caps seem to reform all right, and they're pretty over-engineered. So I expect we can get something out of it on the original parts, assuming there are original parts in here. I don't know anything about the state of the chassis, so let's find out. Oh, we have the antenna terminals. That's the early type. It has the electromagnetic ion trap magnet. It's a neat thing. So rather than a permanent magnet type, one of these guys is electromagnet. And these are shipping out to CRT because there's not much that supports it, and you actually remove it and install it from the front of the set. So you can do all this up with zip ties. I'm going to just clip them out. Oh no, I'll wait till I pull the chassis. Yeah, the chassis bolts in place. There, that's good. Tip for this, hang it off the workbench and get 2 out, flip it around and get the other 2. It is a rather heavy chassis. Got the chassis out pretty quickly because the 2 front chassis bolts were missing. There's 2 back ones. I'll replace those. Remember to disconnect the antenna terminals up here, otherwise, because it's hardwired to the chassis. And if you just pull the chassis, it's going to rip that apart. It was a mouse house at some point, unfortunately. We got a little bit of bedding, some droppings. Clean that out. Otherwise, it's rather clean inside. Alright, let's take a look at the chassis. Alright, here's the chassis, and right away I have to correct myself. This does have vertical and horizontal centering controls, but it also has a gimbal mounted focus coil and yoke. Yeah, so you can do it both ways, I guess. Here's that ion trap magnet, double pole, or 2 magnets. CRT plug. It's a real drag that the high voltage cover is missing. Alright, so big old power transformers on that side, and this is where the high power resistors are located. I think we're okay tipping on this side. No, see some of these models, that's the horizontal oscillator coil, and there's a couple bolts sticking out, so you really don't want to tip it on this side unless you put some padding in there. And the other side is the antenna input. So what I got into the habit of doing, I have some scraps of styrofoam, and when I lean the chassis over, I throw those under it to keep pressure off the wiring or fasteners. Those early RCAs go, this is relatively lightweight small chassis. And fantastic. It is all original. There we go. That's what you want to see. Here it is with some better lighting. One thing you always want to be super careful of with this type of set, be it a 621 or 721, is built-in speaker field coil. Don't put your fingers through the front of it. We do have some corrosion here. This is the area where the mouse house was. These caps up here look a little I'm really looking for those wires that have been chewed on. There's a little bit of fluff here and there. Depending on the wire insulation, sometimes they're attracted to it, and you don't want to have to deal with that if you don't have to. Some of these coils, look, the wax is kind of bubbly on these peaking coils, and this here, but oh, we have one replaced part there. Totally original because of the way they look. They're all Aerovox, these yellow beeswax dipped paper caps. A little fluff up here, but I don't see any damage. Whew. Nothing charred. Oh, so we got some nice asbestos sheeting inside the power transformer. We're just going to leave that alone. And yeah, no, that all looks good. So let's rig up a little 5AXP4 test CRT and pull the rectifier, turn it on. If all the tubes light up, put the rectifier back in and slow power up. You know the drill. Hey, what do you know, there's a service tag on it from 1957. Maybe that's when they replaced that one capacitor. So when the set was 10 years old, somebody took it in to be serviced. They probably replaced some tubes too. I'm doubtful that it went 10 years without needing any servicing. That would have been kind of remarkable. I assume this is loose from when the owner took the picture tube out, because normally it should be tightened down. Alright, so here's our little test CRT. Feed that through there. Plug it in. Again, there's no support in the front on these sets, so it's going to be flopping around a little bit. We've got to be careful. We can put some shims in here to make it a little more stable. Or actually discovered something. And we don't need this. And this is great that this can go off to the side, because this CRT is self-focusing and doesn't use an ion trap. And it has enough lead length. We can just put it down here on the workbench out of harm's way. It won't interfere with anything. So, where is it? I found it a large plastic clamp that I got with an assortment of clamps for woodworking. Fits on the neck of this, and we'll hold it firmly in place. Here's what I'm talking about. So we're gonna. Oh yeah, we also got to position this one, get the high voltage connector on it. Plenty of lead length. So originally it had a 10 BP4. We can't do that. No, it's not going anywhere. Alright, so we're going to pluck this guy out. This is definitely a new tube. But it is an RCA. So maybe they went to an RCA dealer. And this horizontal output tube is new, and it's also an RCA. From the tag, I can't tell. It's a generic service tag. I can't tell. I don't know who the owner was. Technician, just a couple initials, MD or something like that. But it doesn't say the name of the dealership or anything. There's no RCA logo on it. Alright, cheater cord in installed. So full power, no rectifier too. Turn these lights down a little bit. Here we go. No power, maybe it's turned off. Yep. On. Current slammed over more than 1.5 amps, and then it came right back down. And I bet all the tubes are glowing. Yeah, it looks like it. Yep. Not surprised. These early black and white TV power transformers are really beefy. I don't think I've ever found a bad one. Okay, so Variac all the way down. Alright, rectifier tube back in. Voltage turned way down. All the way down. Turn up a bit. So that was about 30 volts. Barely any current draw at all. I'm going to keep doing this over the course of 15, 20, 30 minutes, and I will resume recording when something interesting happens, if anything interesting happens. Been running this for a while, and with the rectifier tube in, and the current draw is essentially the same with it in or with it out, so I'm thinking this is bad, so I'm going to try popping in a different one. Pretty common. What happens is somebody finds it, all of a sudden they just plug it in and turn on full voltage and it blows the rectifier. Huh, that's about the same too. Not up high enough yet that I can see the filaments glowing. They're just not there yet. No, I can see some of the little miniature tubes are glowing. They're getting warm. The 5U4 is just cold. Oh, now it's lighting up. Now it's lighting up. I guess I just hadn't hit that threshold. I think you guys can. That guy. Now it's drawing a bit more current. I get up to about 65, 70 volts before this seemed to be doing anything. Still not drawing as much current as I think it should, though, so I wonder if some of these guys might be burned open. Starting to see something that's a little bit concerning to me. Whereas the current was holding real stable, go up just a little bit every time I increased the Variac until suddenly it started going up. It kind of jumped a little bit and then stabilized and then started going up and up and up and up. Turned on the Variac and it still kept going up and up and up. Could be an indication that something is not happy. So I'll let it cool down for a little bit. So I'm at 85 volts or so. Let's see, such do draw quite a bit of power, 220 watts, so almost 2 amps under normal operation. So there it's down nice and low. When I turned it off, it was almost to the far right. And no indication of life out of the set. I've been at this about 15 minutes. Optimistically, what I was hoping was happening is that I got to a high enough voltage that the oscillators are starting to run, which would draw more current. So by backing off a little bit, maybe I'm just not quite getting there. Or the other bad possibility was we hit thermal runaway and it was just going to keep getting worse. No signs of high voltage or any activity, no crackle out of the speaker, nothing like that. Turn the volume up all the way, so let's go up a little more. We're definitely in the zone where something should start happening. So we're at 100 volts now going in. But it's drawing a lot less current than it was when I stopped. And yeah, nothing. Actually, I don't think the 6BG6 is even lit up. Oh yeah, it is. It is. Just from where I was standing, couldn't see the filament. Yeah, that's not a speaker, which can indicate that something is open in the power supply and there's no current going through the field coil. So it should be a hiss or something coming out of it by now. This is not drawing as much current as it should be. I'm getting close to what its normal line voltage input should be. And at that voltage, the current should be off because this scale's only 1.5 amps and it drops to close to 2 amps under normal operation. So I'll just go up to 117 because I'm pretty sure. Well, it did go up quite a bit with the current draw. But still, it should be over 1.5 amps, and we're not there. Now it's shooting up. Oh! And I just blew the 5G4. Yeah, so something's not bad. Could very well be an electrolytic cap is shorted out in the power supply. That's very, very likely what happened. And that's why you do it with this equipment. I was hoping the circuit breaker on that would have tripped before this tube went out, but I just lost a 5G4. Ooh, that's pretty toasty too. So that's what was starting to happen before, and I caught it in time. Is something in here was letting loose and drawing excessive current, and so now really that's why the power transformers in these, I'm sure, why most basically they're all good, is because this is your fuse. All right, so now we know. So what do I want to do next? I want to replace the main electrolytic filter cap on the power supply. So let's start looking at some service info. Oh, and we'll test the caps too, because I would like to verify that is actually what the problem is. What's curious to me though is here's the power transformer, here's the rectifier. The filter caps aren't over here. There's one, but they're over there, and there's one underneath the chassis. So they're not right here like you might think. My apologies again. We're going too many RCAs and mixing them up. Some RCAs have a filter cap underneath. This does not. Instead, it has 3 in this area. So they are the opposite corner from where the power transformer is. There are 3 up here. A little tricky to get at. Can do. I'll probably have to remove some of these paper caps to get it all. Or maybe not. There's one there, one there. This power resistor's cold. I noticed that in this black box, the big power resistors, this is cold as well. And the fact that the set wasn't drawing as much current as it should be, there was nothing out of the speaker. I think one of the main filter caps is shorted, and the set was not getting power. Now, I can't feel to see if they're warm because they have cardboard covers over all the filter caps that access some insulation, which makes it difficult. But let's trace out the service info and see which one of these is the main filter cap. I'm checking the main caps right after the 5U4 rectifier, and I'm not seeing a dead short, but they're definitely not healthy. So right now I am on this guy, which should be 80 microfarad, good for 450 volts. So on the other side of the field coil, which does seem to be good, just based on the resistance reading. 100 volts, okay, 200, yep. 3, I haven't got the leakage to be acceptable level at 300 volts yet. But it's certainly not a dead short. But when I check capacitance, it's clocking in at around 15, and the pi wedge on the eye tube is not very distinct, which is an indication that it's very leaky, not very healthy. Could I continue to try forming it up? Yeah. So I don't think this one is the culprit. However, this can be deceiving. So I can check it at 100, 200, it's acceptable. 300, it's gradually fading out. But at full voltage, maybe it's got 400 volts in the set. That might be enough to cause it to break down and short out. In other words, it's been my experience that to properly test a cap, you have to test it at its full rated voltage, which would be 450. And if I go up to 400, it's done solidly, very leaky. That being said, is that enough leakage current to take out a 5U4? Probably not. This type of cap tester and most early ones don't show you how much leakage current there is. It'll show you that there is a lot. The brighter that is, the longer it takes to fade out, or if it ever fades out, is an indication of how much, but I couldn't tell you in microamps or milliamps how much leakage that is. I do have a Pyramid CRA one, but I don't particularly want to dig it out right now. But let's check some other caps. See, I don't think it's that one, because that's on the other side of the field coil. And if that was a dead short, I would have taken out the field coil most likely. And that also, the field coil resistance would have been enough of a buff, well, been somewhat of a buffer to this. So it's more likely to be one of these two guys. So there's C128, 40 microfarad in parallel with C131, 40 microfarad. So let's check each of those, shall we? Alright, so this is one of the 40 microfarad. 100 volts. It did fade out. If I go back to 0, that's not good. This is a split neon bulb. One side lights up when it's charging up, the other side should light up when it discharges. It's holding 0 charge. And these should also be good to 450 volts. There's another way to form them up, by the way. Rather than turning the set on, if you logically disconnect each section of each cap, you can use something like this to do it. But you can imagine that takes a long time. You have to disconnect a lot of wires and hook them back up and all that. This is not good, considering the 15 plus minutes I spent slowly powering it up. I'm only at 200 volts, and it should be good for 450. And this does not look like it's going to be going out anytime soon. And again, no stored charge whatsoever. Well, for the heck of it, let's try to check the capacitance. It actually is kind of showing an indication around the 40 mark. And if it was dead open, or I can simulate that here, if your cap is completely open, the pi wedge would open when you're in the open position, and this is not. However, if it's dead shorted, it should open up in this position, and it opens up a little bit. Well, that's not good either. But for sure, that's not good. Let's check the final 40. So this is not good by any means, but still not a dead short. However, considering how leaky it is at 200, you can imagine this is right after the rectifier, so there's going to be over 300 volts on it, I believe, in this set. It's going to draw a lot of current, I'm sure. By the way, if you're wondering how do I know what's what, this is the original RCA service info. So look in the schematic, C131A, C128B, and there's a little symbol, they're half moons. If you look on this parts placement diagram, yeah, all this stuff is small, but you could zoom it up if you have trouble seeing it. This is the bottom view, oriented the same. These are the caps up here. I'll show you the little symbols here. So there's C127, there's the half moon, C128 half moon. So I just checked 128. So we want to find 131, which is that guy over there. And yeah, let's see what we get with that. Alright, the last main power supply filter cap, again rated for 450. Okay, it did hold a charge at 100. No discharge though, not a good sign. Let's try going to 2. It's like the other cap. Now, if you hadn't tried forming this up at all, no, they're not going to form up in 30 seconds. It could take 5 minutes or more. But I've already been powering this setup for a while, or attempting to, and yeah, none of this is looking good at all. And again, let's see if they're going to hold a charge. Nope, absolutely not. It does seem a little odd that 2 separate caps would be equally as bad, but that's what I'm seeing. I trust this tester. It's been overhauled. I've used it many times. I'll show you what a new cap tests like in a moment. For the heck of it, try testing the capacitance. Now see, this one is, the eye is kind of open in the shorts position, more than the other one. So between these two, which are connected in parallel, that could be enough to do it. Yeah, it does kind of show capacitance, sort of in the ballpark. See, this meter caps out at about 80 microfarad at size it can go, and these cap values are kind of near the upper range, so I don't really trust that reading too much. But it definitely should not be open in this position. So I'll grab a new 40 microfarad and show you what that tests like, so you know what a fresh, healthy cap looks like on a tester. Here we go. You always want to make sure this isn't 0 before you do this. Otherwise these leads will have potentially hundreds of volts on them. So positive, yeah, negative. And so when we go into leakage, charge up, charge up, charge up. And when I go back to 0, the other side lights up and slowly fades out of this chart. So, charge up, goes out, discharge, goes out. That's what a healthy cap should be like. And when we check for capacitance, when we're all the way in your sorts position, no wedge at all. And when I rotate to the capacitance, we get a nice solid wedge around 40-50 microfarad. So that's what a healthy cap tests like. So that kind of stinks because I tested 3 of the 4 electrolytics, and 2 of them are looking really bad and 1 not so good. So I don't think there's any chance of me really powering this up successfully with the original electrolytics in there. So I'm going to go ahead and replace them. Using adapter caps on all of them. These sets are the most ideal application of any set I've yet encountered for them, because all the electrolytics are isolated from the chassis. They're all on phenolic insulating wafers, and they're easy to get at. And they're held in by rivets. Drill out the rivets, disconnect the leads, remove the cap, pop a new one in, wire it up, move on. Alrighty, so let's start replacing some of these here. 1, 2, 3 right here. I'm going to do this one. I just disconnected the wires from it. I just clipped off the lugs. And I'm going to do this old school. Just have an old egg beater type drill here. It's a nice titanium coated bit. And there's one rivet there and one rivet there. I'm just going to drill them out. An oversized bit and then a little tap with a nail set. And that'll be that. Make sure you get the wires out of the way. Soft, mild steel, because the rivets are meant to be bent over, so they drill out very easily. And one warning about these old RCAs, the wiring can be very brittle. It's cloth-covered wiring with got a perch inside, which is I think it's natural rubber. And that's just about it. And they get really, really crunchy. If you heat them up with a heat gun a little bit, or a hot hair dryer, you can sometimes revive them a little bit. Basically, you don't want to kink them because they'll just crack. So I'm just trying to carefully push them aside. There we go. Get the cap out of there. The reason I do this is I have to work rather late at night, and I don't want to make a lot of noise. So that's one. There's two, and that's the cap. And there she is. A lot of these are only 2-section too, so they're really easy to replace. Now if you're lucky, this is old and crunchy. Sometimes these tops just come off real easy, which will allow you to reuse it to put over the new caps if you decide to do something like I'm doing. Let's give you a chance to verify what's in here. So it's an 80 at 450 and a 10 at 450. That's it. Geez, and it's only 75C. Usually these are at least 85C. Also doesn't weigh very much. Just makes me think it's probably dried out. A little bit of crud around the terminal openings. Nothing too horrible. It wasn't really swelled up or anything, but yeah, it tests terrible. Been working on wiring in the adapter caps. I've been wondering about this 10K power resistor. I'm not so sure it's original. Well, I was tracing out what it goes to, and got to looking behind this box here. And can you see that? Remember I was talking about looking for wires that have been chewed up? Yeah, there's one back there that it's just got a couple threads of wire left on it. Insulation's completely gone. There's another one down in there that's a little chewed up. So, luckily this metal box comes off very easily. There's a couple nuts up there. It's horizontal oscillator coil. With that out of the way, I'll be able to get at that, and I'll just replace that entire wire. Taking a little break from the recapping action to take a look at the tubes, but before I do that, I just realized this took out my PR57. I hope it's just a fuse. There's a circuit breaker in here, which I've tripped in the past, and you just turn it off and back on, and it's fine. That's not working now. And the fuse holder, I believe, is in the back. So I have no love coming out of this thing. Anyways, the tubes. This is a trip. This was one very dedicated RCA set owner. All the tubes are RCA branded, but they cover a pretty wide range of years. So they must have gone back to the dealer they got it from, or had a service contract or whatever, and just kept renewing their tubes again and again. I think these are likely the only two originals, the only two that have the old RCA Victor logo. Then we have a mix of some white and quite a few red. And those will be the replacement tubes. And this one is, some of these are a fairly new style, like this 5V4GA. Whereas originally, it would have been a Coke bottle like that. So I'm rather curious now to see how many of these are still good. So far, the tubes have been testing rather well, except for the two that appear to be originals, the ones that say RCA Victor on them, which are both 6AG5s. Checking for transconductance. Green is good. Yeah, that's not a good tube. So, also both the 6SN7s are in the replace category. So what I'm doing, I'm weeding out the ones that test in the replace region on my Hickok 600A, but we're going to try it with them. As the saying goes, the only true test is in the actual device they're designed for. But but I will replace these before I give them to give the set back to the owner, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to dig up RCA branded tubes as well. But I am curious to see how well these might perform. I do find a lot of 6AG5s are often bad. They are typically used in the IF section, and I don't know if it's because of how they're biased or how they're designed, but quite often they are weak. And for sure, of all the tubes, the two 6AG5s that are the original test far, far worse than any other tubes. Well, here are all the tubes that tested in the reject region. Especially all three of the 6AG5s are nearly dead. I'm really curious to, once we get the set working, to pop these in and see what kind of performance we get. Well, I had the set upright. I did a little test cleaning. This thing is, I'm not quite sure what this is. It's from Texas. It's dry and dusty, I guess. But yeah, I don't think it might be somewhat from cigarettes, but I don't really smell, and it's not quite sticky. And it's not corrosion. It's just like this thing was out in the desert or something. So I'm trying a variety of cleaning products. Things like alcohol don't really do anything. Usual CLR does a pretty good job. It just takes a while, but it does do a fine job. Strong cleaners, no, like Simple Green, not really doing it. So again, I'm not really sure what's going on there. But underneath that, it's in rather good condition. No corrosion, and the plating's in good shape.